Thank you all for coming out on this nice rainy morning, and welcome to our Spring Open Forum. This is going to be a question and answer panel, and I just wanted everybody to know that a few of the questions we'll be bringing forward from last fall. So if you had questions from last fall, we'll try to get to answering them today. If you have additional questions, please feel free to bring them to one of our senators. If you could, all the senators, if you could please stand up and be recognized. Thank you very much. And of course, as always, you're more than welcome to come up to the microphone and ask your own question if you would like to do that. But we have Sue and Kathleen who would be more than willing to ask the questions for you. So at this particular moment in time, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel, and then we'll go ahead and begin the Q&A session. So at the farthest to my left is Jeff Morris, and he is Acting Vice President of Human Capital Services. Next to him is Cindy Bontrager, who is VP of Admin and Finance. The next empty chair is President Myers, which he will fill here shortly. I saw him walking in the hallway. And then next to him will be our Vice President for Senate, who is Carrie Fink, and of course myself, who is the President of USS Senate, Carol Martin. So let's go ahead and begin with any questions that you may have.
I'll go ahead and start with one that I was handed here this morning, and this has to do with people that are covered under CAPE. They want to know why they had to vote to go USS and they're not getting any of the benefits of USS. Then how can the union have such a hold on us even though we don't pay any dues?
Gary?
Thank you.
Jeff, I'm Gary Lightnaker. I'm Director of Labor Relations and Special Projects. And I noticed that Glenn is here today as well, and Glenn is on our Meet and Confer team. We have been meeting steadily on a weekly basis to come to an agreement on the maintenance and service agreement for the employees in that unit. I heard several questions in that. So one was, why do we have to be a part of it?
It's the union.
And that's determined at the state level. It was voted on by K-State employees back in the 70s, as I recall, to be represented by CAPE, or the Kansas Association of Public Employees. There was also a comment about why we have to belong or we don't even belong, I think was part of your question. The state of Kansas is a right-to-work state, which means to be represented by the union, you do not have to pay dues or be a dues-paying member to be represented. What it means is you just have to be in one of those job classes. And as far as the status of Meet and Confer, we continue to go through that process. I think we're very close. I think Glenn would tell, I don't think Bill is here today, is that right, Glenn? So Bill would tell you that both sides are very interested in a win-win solution for employees. So I think we'll be done in the next month or so, or a couple of months. And did you have anything else you wanted to add, Glenn? Okay, thank you.
All right, this is another question that came in this morning. They're wondering why it is when you look at the job site that the custodial positions are frozen, and then they also express concern about having help in upper management training.
Okay, so clarification on the first part. So it mentioned that custodial positions are frozen
When you look at the job site.
when you look at the job site. I'm sorry, I don't understand that question, and if someone's here. We have added new buildings, and we have gone through the process of adding additional positions to do the work in those new buildings. Now, because of restraints with budget, as it went through budget advisory, we had to scale back a little bit on the building maintenance positions and some of that, but we have added custodial positions to support, for example, the College of Business building and the engineering building. And then the second part of that?
Concerned about having help in our upper management trainer?
Help in our upper management trainer.
Trainer.
Okay. Is that the safety position, perhaps? I know Sandy Hoffman has taken a new position over in the College of Agriculture, and there has been a transition from that safety position over into environmental health and safety, which would then assist and has the more university-wide perspective. And so we think that position then would provide more value from that skill set to not, facilities that will continue the work that is done there, but then also have that perspective for across the campus to make sure, that safety concerns are being addressed everywhere. But that position is vacant right now, and we're in the process of filling it. If that's the position, and I apologize, I'm not quite sure if that's the position they were referring to, but if not, and you did ask the question, feel free to email me or come up afterwards, and we can make sure we get the answer.
Okay. This next one is kind of long, and it's in reference to the March 30th issue of K-State Today, an article that Jeff put in titled "A Title Challenge." We are simplifying the number of titles used in our system. Please know it is a reflection of moving to duty-based job description and compensation structure. So if we are moving to duty-based job descriptions and compensation structure, can you explain? Why is there a difference in title depending on the unit? For example, an employee working for an academic department is titled as an office specialist, providing specialized administrative work, but an employee working for a dean, assistant vice president, associate vice president, or vice president is titled an executive assistant, providing administrative support with a beginning salary range difference of $16,978.
Okay, yeah, that's a long question.
Yeah.
So just start with the beginning. The reason that we're sort of standardizing these titles and duties across the enterprise is because you do find differences in what people do. And I would say today we know more about compensation, what people are actually paid, and what's going on across the enterprise than we've known since I've been here, which has been one of the benefits of the study that we've conducted, because we found some things I think that we're maybe not happy about, but you cannot start to address those issues until you identify them. In this case, we're looking at what levels of titles are used to serve certain people. I think I can fairly say, Derek, and tell me if I'm wrong, there's probably been about any combination under the sun you can come up with. So part of what we're doing with our system is standardizing that and saying for these duties, for this level of responsibility, this is where the salary range should be. If you look at them today, are they going to be all equal, and are we going to be standardized? The answer is no. I think that gives us something we need to work at. We started off not really knowing, now we know. Now we know we have to sort of address that and look at it. The ideal is going to be that someone that reports to a dean or a vice president is clearly doing something on a different scale or scope, perhaps, than someone that's working in a department. Not always true, depending on the size of the department. In some cases, we have departments that are divisions. We have entities within K-State Research Extension that are very large enterprises. So part of our learning curve has been to say, how do these balance out? How do we compare that across the enterprise? I would say today where we are is we sort of identified what it looks like. And as we move forward, we're going to try to make sure that we can continue to evolve and get people in the right places within that organization.
Okay, this question is regarding wage freezes, and it says, what is the administration's plan going forward regarding wage freezes and position compression?
Take that one? Wait.
Yeah, well, I can tell you a couple of things. The wage freezes, one of the things that we've been doing is working, when we went with total rewards, we didn't want to have a lot of changes going on in terms of reclassifications. Now that we've got the structure, we're getting the structure in place. It will be officially in place for start of the fiscal year. What that's going to do is give us the flexibility to be able to move people within the ranges, which we've not had that flexibility before for these areas, which we're now. The challenge is going to be is that we need to go down and put the guidelines and the methodology and what the rationale is behind that, which is what our compensation team is working on right now, which is when does somebody move along those ranges and how does that do that? The compounding factor is the money, because we all know where the budget is. We all know that we're not well funded right now. Our priority, as we've said multiple times, our priority is going to bring people that are not at the minimum of their salary range up to the salary range. I think that's going to be the first step. The second step is compression. We've done a lot of work. I'm doing a lot of work looking at compression. I've gone back and looked at the people that were affected by the Hay Group deal back in, I think, 2009 or whatever it was. We have people that were stuck in the system. And I will tell you, we've identified some of those. We know that that's going to be probably the second or third priority that we need to address. One of the challenges we've had is we've not had a mechanism to do that. If you look at how we treat faculty, we have a mechanism on how we treat compression. Because if you get promotion, if you get tenure, for certain things you get a raise. And then a few years ago we started giving some targeted awards so that when people in departments had an issue, they could start to address that. We've not had that mechanism in our USS and professional staff. So as Cindy and I are, and as we're working as a team, as a cabinet and moving forward, we've got to create those mechanisms. Now that we have a structure and we've identified where people are, we've got to create some mechanisms to solve some of those issues. I'm also convinced that now that we have a structure, as we start hiring people in and as we start moving people into the system, that some of those issues will be self-corrected because we can now see them better than we could before. I mean, I've heard a lot of talk about it since I've been here, but it's been very difficult to quantify and actually look at. And once you actually quantify a problem, it gets a lot easier to solve when you can start going through and saying, okay, we have 150 people that we need to do something about versus we have this problem that just seems to keep being out there and never getting answered.
So if I can add a piece on the budget, please understand there's a long ways to go, but for the first time since probably the 2008 legislative session, there has been discussion in the Senate about a 2% pay increase for state employees. Now, seriously, there has not been any kind of discussion since 2008, which was the last year the state provided any funding for a salary increase effective in fiscal year 9. All we've had is state reductions pretty much every year since that time. And so please understand we have a long way to go to get through the end of the session. But at least there's legislators out there who recognize the value of state employees, and they're at least putting on the table a discussion to be had about providing a salary increase. Now, we still have issues with the revenue portion of the budget, and that's going to require a tax increase, and that's going to require both sides agreeing and the governor lining up with that, or they have to override. And so we have a long way to go to get through this session, but I do at least want to make sure that you're aware and make sure you're communicating out there with your legislators that there is at least, the Senate has a plan in for a 2% salary increase for state employees, the first time since 2008 session.
And another thing that's part of that is the realization that we took some unfair cuts in the last couple of reductions, and they have proposed to give KU and K-State back some of the money that was cut previously linked to our research expenditures, which the state has nothing to do with. They just lumped us in there so they could reduced the cuts to places like Pittsburgh State and Emporia and so forth. So that was totally unfair, biased towards research universities. They've said they want to restore that, and that is several $1 million. I mean, it's not a lot, but it's several $1 million. If it happens, then that's good for us. And of course, the other pot of revenue that we rely on is our tuition revenue. And as, just for general knowledge, as our enrollment has gone down the last 3 semesters, that's millions of dollars that we have to find. It's millions of dollars we have to find. So the reason I'm saying that is we had open house on Saturday, and we can thank God for allowing the weather to be nice, but we can also thank, I think a lot of people probably sitting here or people you know, that helped make our university campus look as good as it can. It looked really good. And we've had some funky weather, so so for those, if you don't think you're connected to enrollment, you are, because people are impressed with how things looked. We looked about as good as we could look for this time of year, given where we were. So for those folks that had anything to do with that, thank you. Inside buildings, outside buildings, everywhere. It was, and I just want to reiterate, because somebody might not ask me a question later, the number one priority for compensation are those folks that are below the salary bands. Number one. And it's unconscionable where we are. We'll fix that as soon as we can fix it. So you know. There are a lot of things to fix, but that's one that we have to fix.
I'm going to ask a question. This probably falls under Jeff. So this morning, many of us, not those that were covered by the CAPE agreement, got our communications about where we fall within market. In there, it made the statement that I believe in previous communications, it was stated that supervisors would get information prior to the supervisees getting the information. Time and time again, I've heard that that has not happened and that there should be some sort of training for supervisors. I'm just asking, when is that training going to happen? Because we're not supposed to go to HCS, we're supposed to go to our department heads. When many of us have approached our department head, they don't know what to say to us. So how do we overcome that obstacle?
Well, that's an excellent question, because I think that's one of the challenges that we have to look at as an organization is if we're going to use the organizational structure to manage these situations, then we have to do a better job of that. We are currently working on, in fact, we're presenting tomorrow at First Tuesday, we're presenting our training tools that we have to deal with the salary compression issues and how to handle reclassifications. We've got some really, really sophisticated and nice tools that have been built on best practices that we're going to be rolling out to them tomorrow. We've had training that's been available to people. I will tell you it's been hit and miss in terms of who's taken it and who hasn't. I think that's one of our challenges. And if there's one thing we could probably get better at as an organization is becoming more of a learning and training organization. It's interesting when you look at, and Shannon, see, they do a wonderful job putting together packages and stuff, but it's interesting when you look at what we call mandatory training and the completion rates, it's somewhat less than mandatory. And I think that's a cultural issue that we have to start to address. What I'm hoping is that as we professionalize the human capital system, that we also professionalize how we manage, and we have to give people training on how to manage people and salaries, how to manage performance management, which we know we're inconsistent on across the enterprise. These are important things for us to be able to move forward long term. We have a lot of people in our system with supervisory titles and roles that maybe haven't been trained very well or even been supervisors. So I think that's a gap. I think we've got some good programs in place and the team's got some good stuff. We're going to be more systematic about it going forward, is my hope.
Okay, I understand going forward, that's what we're going to do, but what do we do now to address the many questions that our supervisees are going to have? And we're not department heads, so we may not have the information that they have. What do we do now to help them?
What we've asked is if they go to their supervisor and they don't have the answers or get the answers, that then they contact our folks.
Okay.
Because the idea is we want to sort of triage that so I can get, rather than 1,500 questions, if we get 400 questions. The other thing everybody should know is we've got everybody in Human Capital Services today sitting ready to answer the phone. They're all there, they're all on task, and we're saying, it's not, I don't want phone calls going into voicemail or getting lost or emails not getting answered. So we're trying to be on point as best we can. One of the things that we've learned through this process, and you hope to learn, but it's really easy to create more demand than you can respond to. And so you say, okay, tell us everything, and all of a sudden 1,500 people tell you something. And you got 4 people sitting in a room with 1,500 questions. So I think we're learning, one of the things we've learned is we've got to titrate how we get those responses back and be able to make sure we can handle a response before we create an expectation. So, and I'll be honest, I think we've not met the expectations in some cases. And it's not because people haven't worked hard, it's not because they didn't have the answers. I just think we underestimated the scope and the scale of some of the issues, and that's something that we've learned from, and we'll do better.
So Carol, if I can share what happened within administration and finance. So I did receive an email from classification for the total rewards, and then that did get distributed to my leadership team, which would be Ryan Swanson, Ace, Abbott, all of the heads. And then we have our Administrative Support Center, Human Capital HR folks, who then went and round and met then with their supervisors to share what those ranges and salaries were. I received an email about the training that was provided from Human Capital Services. Not last weekend, the weekend before, so it's been a couple weeks. I went on and did the training, so at least I could be aware of the information that was being shared from Human Capital Services. So now please understand, just within administration and finance, we have over 300 supervisors. And so we understand that trying to get that information down to where it needs to be effective is a challenge. But that's basically what has been done within our unit in order to try to get the information shared based upon what was provided from Human Capital Services.
Thank you.
Are there any longevity incentives anymore? Vacation leave is the same as new employees. They start off with the same amount of leave as anyone who's been here over 10 years now. And they're often going to be paid as much as new employees will be paid as much as someone who's just starting. Okay. The ones that are starting are going to be paid as much as the ones that have been here a while. So why stay?
So is there a question here?
Okay.
Okay,
Yes, what's the question? Are there any longevity incentives anymore for staying?
So we still, I have to be careful because the legislator has cut us probably 6 or 7 times when I use the word longevity. So I may be a little oversensitive to that because I don't want us to get our budget cut again. But we still have within the USS salary structure the longevity bonus. I think most of you understand what I mean. And so if you've been here 10 years, there's $50, and that gets accrued. It maxes out at 25 years. As far as I know, USS Senate, no one has made any changes to that program. Now, the state doesn't fund it or support it, but Kansas State still provides that increase each year to employees if they add another year, and they're within that range. Now, I believe the comment related to the leave, and I'll remind you, that was a system decision made with the Board of Regents, and it has been implemented in the system except for whatever's happening with the negotiations here at K-State with our union employees. Now, I think the other question related to the salaries, I think that's what part of my understanding of total rewards is trying to address, to give employers the opportunity to have some flexibility. So when people are hired in, and again, it depends on the position, because I have had some difficulties hiring in all across the range, people in at some of our salaries. But, that, I think, is what total rewards is allowing us to give some of that flexibility so that you do have, with your additional experience, some discrepancy with pay. But please understand, it's going to take some time for us to get there, and it's going to take us trying to find the money to do that.
Were KU job titles and pay ranges looked at when total rewards were finalized?
Yes. So here's what happened. Last September, when we were looking at the initial rollout of this, we received a lot of feedback from people talking about the basis for the market study. So we went back and looked at the market, and I had a couple concerns. I went and talked to the original vendor and had a couple concerns about how we defined the market and how we defined how K-State lines up with what we're doing with KU. My contention is there were a much larger regional market than what was originally assumed. If you look at where we hire from, what happens in Kansas City, Topeka, Lawrence affects very much what happens in Manhattan. One of the challenges we have with Manhattan is if we use the university as our base and we're low, then we artificially skew the market. So we did go back and we've compared the salary bands with KU. We've compared the ranges with KU. Ours are actually slightly more generous at the top end, I think, in some cases. So here's the challenge, and this is the issue. When you look at what KU did when they converted, they basically don't have anybody in their bottom three ranges. So they essentially took everyone to a living wage. If you're hired in at KU, you're hired in at a range 4. We still have folks in our first three ranges. So as we look at that, we say that's where the discrepancy is today. And as we're going through looking about where we go in the future, that's one of the things that we need to look at. I would say that we certainly philosophically believe that our people deserve to get paid the equivalent of what people at other major universities get paid. We've had challenges getting there. I think putting a structure into place, looking at where we are and being able to adapt that structure is going to be a very positive thing for us. But that's really the difference right now. The other thing we've gone back and looked at, from position to position, it sometimes doesn't always line up on where you are in the grades. I'm hoping that over the next few months, as we get feedback and continue to work with Total Rewards, some of those things can be worked on. So that's, we know it's not perfect. We know we have some areas, and there's some very specific areas we've looked at that we have some work to do, where we are not where we need to be in terms of bringing people in or keeping people, and we have high turnover in some of those areas. So I think the advantage is we now know we have much better data. We're looking at real numbers, and that gives us I hope we make much better decisions going forward based on what we kind of know today.
Last year, KU was able to give salary increases to staff because they put in their tuition increase proposal that went to the Board of Regents. Could K-State do that as well?
I will take that one on. KU did put in a salary adjustment that they funded through enrollment growth. And so if you look in, because I just was looking at that the other day, because I wanted to see if they funded some police positions in there. So K-State has done something very similar, and then when we were experiencing enrollment growth, and 15 would have been the last year, we also did provide sporadic and pretty small salary increases. And so as President Myers has mentioned, we've had this nice, modest increase of enrollment in the last 2 years. We've seen that growth basically disappear. We've lost almost 1,000 students within the last 2 academic years. And so that's the struggle that we have in trying to fund salary raises. For 1%, it's about $2.2 million. And that's just looking at filled positions. So to try to do a 1% salary adjustment, it costs $2.2 million. We're getting reductions from the state. We're getting reductions because our tuition revenue isn't generating what it does with enrollment. What's left? Tuition rate increase. How much can we increase? How much more can we add on? There's not much. There's not much capacity there. Now, we have some little difference of agreements among some of us of where we can go with that, but, so you have to ask, is that impacting our enrollment? It is. You have to, it probably is. There's a lot of our students, families that can't afford that. So that's the struggle that we have. And so we're looking at that. The Budget Advisory Committee had a very tough meeting this past week, trying to figure out, with all these priorities we have, how can we fund a salary increase for employees? We understand that the net pay is declining. We understand that you're paying more in health insurance, you're paying more in retirement, and your net pay is declining. And so, President Myers, we're trying to get those under market, get them where they need to go. We're trying to provide something that we can put into employee salary, just trying to get your net pay back to where it was. It is a struggle.
So when it comes to tuition income or tuition revenue, one of the things we've decided to do here just recently is to bring somebody from the outside in to look at our enrollment strategies. And so strategic enrollment notions, we need somebody from the outside to tell us why it's going down and what we can do to change that. Can we change the way we look at out-of-state students? Can we look at the contiguous states and make them a special deal and get our revenue, enrollment, or tuition revenue up? The reason KU was able to do that is their enrollment actually went up when ours went down, total enrollment. So there's something going on here that we don't totally understand, and that's why I referred back to our open house. We had, I think, a decent crowd for open house, a lot of enthusiasm among youngsters for things Kansas State, and that's because I didn't do anything, but you all and the colleges all did a lot to make the place very, very attractive to young people last Saturday. We need to do everything we can in that regard. We also need to look strategically at why is enrollment falling, and we know a lot of the dynamics. We don't know all of them, and we don't know why some universities are successful and others are not. So that's a priority for us to figure that out. If we can figure that out, if we can get enrollment to start going up slightly, then we have all sorts of flexibility, because now we have tuition revenue that's going up, not down, and then we can start doing things. And anyway, so it's a huge issue for us. We could price we're a land-grant university. Part of the mission of a land grant is to provide access to those who might not otherwise have access to higher education. So we've got to be aware of those first-generation students, those from financial means that might not permit college. We don't want to price ourselves out of the market. We could do that. Tomorrow we could make ourselves a private university, charge enough tuition. We'd probably be a lot smaller. That's a model we could follow. But we're a land grant. We've filled a very important role here in the state of Kansas. And I don't think the Board of Regents would go along with it, by the way. But there are alternatives. But we're pretty proud of being a land grant, having a lot of first-generation students and those from maybe lesser means that are able to get an education here at Kansas State, a quality education, and go out and change the world. So we're proud of that. We want to continue that. So that kind of moderates how much we can charge on the tuition side. So we got to figure out other things. And that's why we're hiring somebody from the outside to help us figure this out. We're not sure we understand all we need to understand in that regard. So that's about enrollment. But that's a big part of the equation when it comes to the things we're talking about here today. And by the way, I get a lot of feedback from students how everybody here at K-State helps and makes them feel welcome. I mean, it's part of the reason they like to be here is because of you all, whether you realize it or not. I hear that all the time, that people are always helpful. So whatever you're doing, keep it up, because when we get them on campus, they want to stay. And part of it's because of the faculty, part of it's because we have great residence halls, part of it's because of Aggieville, I guess. But a lot of it's, well, we got to be honest, right? But part of it, a lot of it is because of the interface, when you have interface with students, and sometimes it's casual. Sometimes it's just bumping into people, but people are, I mean, I get these stories all the time about how helpful people are. And it's kind of what differentiates us, I think, from a lot of other universities. I'm proud of that. You ought to be proud of that and that role you play, so.
Previously, if a position was reclassified for a higher title, there would be a salary increase to go with it. Now, because there is overlap in salary grades, is it possible when you advance to go from a mid-range pay level to a low range in the next level? Let's see, let me read that again. Now, because there is overlap in salary grades, is it possible when you advance to go from a mid-range paid level to a low range in the next level? And what prevents departments from reclassifying your position and giving no salary increase because it's still in the acceptable range?
Yes, here it is. I wouldn't consider that best practices in management. I think that's two things. First is one of the advantages of the salary grade ranges, of having a broader salary range, is we have fewer reclassifications, which is part of the goal, because that's a very onerous process. We've got a new tool to do that, but the idea is that you can move people, that we can hopefully move people along without having to go through a bureaucratic step like that. Second is to do that and come through and have that come through our compensation and organizational effectiveness office. I don't see how in the world we would sign off on that type of system where somebody is going to reclassify somebody and pay them less money. It's not been our culture to do that. You know, we've been pretty adamant that when things happen, I would question the management practice of somebody trying to do that and what their motivation was, and why they would want to reclassify somebody and then pay them less money. So it is possible, I guess, you could, if you look at the bands, but I don't know why we would approve that or let that happen. That doesn't seem like good management practice to me, because they're going to do a different job with more duties and get paid less. Who wouldn't want that deal, right? So I think I guess that's possible, but I hope we have some checks and balances, and I know we do with some of the folks that we look at as we do that. But, you know, it's going to take some time, because we're moving culturally from people relying on, hey, I got this title, so I get this amount of money, to I'm doing these duties, and I get this amount of money. And that's a big culture shift, and it's bigger than I think a lot of us realize, because we're now looking at duties-based versus, hey, I can just call everybody this in my department and pay them something. Because what we found is you can do that, and then you get a lot of different levels of people with the same title doing different, not performing the same duties, which is what they've worked so hard with in trying to define that, and why all of our new tools are focused on duties, not necessarily title. That's why we have more generic title groups, because you can have a working title that reflects more what you actually are perceived in the outside world. But within that group of duties, that's kind of where people fit. So I guess that scenario would be possible. I think it would be unlikely. And if I found out about it, it probably wouldn't happen. But we'll see where that goes.
Last week, an HCS survey was sent out to supervisors, and it included a section dealing with raises. This section seemed to imply that the only avenues for raises were through acquiring additional degrees and certifications, or possibly an exceeds expectations on your evaluation. Do non-quantifiable skills have any impact on raises? One more. Are there any plans for guaranteeing time off for staff to pursue a degree and/or certificate?
Okay, so that's a couple of questions, right?
Yes.
Okay, the first one is, the purpose of the survey was to define, to look where people had needs for skill development, and what kind of things that they would find useful to them at the department and personal level. It's not meant to be exclusive that this is the only way you can get increased money. You know, it's interesting, you use the word non-quantifiable, which by nature means you can't quantify it, which makes it more difficult. The truth is there's subjective matters in all of these issues, but when you really look at and we're going to have some more training on this. I know Derek's been working on stuff. But when you really look at what moves people along, it's accepting more duties. It's being able to develop skills that are additional value to the university and the department and help do that. There's some level of personal, education development to do that. I've heard the question before. I've heard this anecdotally. I don't know if it's true. People say, well, I wanted to take a class or something, but my supervisor or so-and-so wouldn't let me do that. I don't know how widespread that is. That's one of the things that would be good to quantify. I think philosophically, we're an institution of higher learning, and we have to give people the opportunities here. That's why we have the tuition programs. That's why we do these things. I encourage everybody on my staff to take a class, even if it means I have to be a little bit more flexible sometimes. Some people may be in situations where they just can't do that. I would hope that would be the rare exception. And I would hope that if someone couldn't work that out, that would raise to some level where they would come to us and we could at least try to work out some accommodation. It's important if somebody wants to improve themselves, we give them that opportunity. And I would be very disappointed if we didn't do that. And it may happen, but I think philosophically that's where we'd like to be. And I don't know if you want to.
Totally agree. People ought to have opportunity.
Are we going to go unclassified professionals?
To go. This rumor, I don't think I deal with this rumor more than 3 times a week. It's Monday, so we have 2 more that we can get it done this week. So the question is, I think it kind of stems from when other people in the system moved, they made the decision. KU made the decision to have 1 classification of staff employees. So they kind of moved people over. So people here, and we've done some work to go back and look and see what the trends were. So again, I say, we're trying to be database. We're saying, okay, we have a lot of overlapping jobs. Some are classified, some are unclassified. Has there been a trend in people hiring more unclassified than hiring classified, or USS as we look over? And the answer has been, if the first data I saw didn't really, and then we came back with some, I think that kind of showed there has been over some time, sort of a trend. I wouldn't say it was a dramatic shift, but as people are making those decisions within the units, they do that sometimes for varying reasons. I think part of it could even be the difference in the retirement costs. I will tell you that there has been no high-level discussions that I'm aware of a formal move to create 1 class employees. It is never, when we started this system, we said we weren't going to move to that. When I ask people what their concerns are, they say their concerns are their protections that they have within the process. And I know we're working right now in terms of that process. We're spending an awful lot of time to be working on processes that we would plan to use. And unless there's somebody that has a different opinion about that, that's where I stand. I do think when we get some of these things done in terms of I'm not using the right word, Gary. What's the word I'm using for that process? The appeals board. I think making sure that there's agreement on that, and that's getting close. That's one of the things people really are concerned about when you talk to them. So, it's easy to project and imagine things. I will tell you that it always surprises me because we're not having those conversations. So I don't know why the rumor crops up 3 times a week.
I was informed there is no dress code on campus. How can some offices enforce them?
You have to wear a purple tie if you work for me, I tell you that.
Well, you have to be dressed, for one.
Well, you don't have to be, but we arrest you if you're not, so.
Yeah, I think there might be some
So
concern.
there's that part, but.
Boy, I don't know. Do you have any of our human capital, I'm not sure of dress code policies I know, and I did see Ryan come in. Yes, hi, Ryan. And I'll just share from my perspective, I know there's been some concerns about uniforms and within facilities, but I think that we've been trying to work together And still, right, got that?
I think, just basically, if the university provides a uniform, I'll try to project. If a uniform is provided for you, you're supposed to wear it. That's, if we have a budget and we provide a uniform, and that's so people know who you are when you're in the building. You're there early in the morning, after hours, it says facilities on it. It's usually something that's uniform, so you know if that's a facilities maintenance person, they're in the right place and they're doing the right thing, because we're in.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. You have to come down. And I don't even know if the question was directed at facilities. I mean, I just picked on him, and I apologize, Ryan, but.
Since I am here, I know what we have gone by, and I'm looking at Gary and our staff over here in HR, because if we provide a uniform, you're expected to wear the uniform that we provide. And that uniform is there to help other people identify who you are. Early in the morning, after hours, when you're cleaning, you're going to mechanical rooms, you're going to custodial closets, we have chemicals, you're carrying tools. You have a lot of things that if someone wasn't in facilities and they're walking around carrying these things, we'd be concerned about that. So it's good for safety, for everybody else to understand. So part of it is we provide a uniform, you're expected to wear the uniform. That simply, so.
I'm going to ask a question. This is probably of General Myers, or President Myers, pardon me. This morning I heard on the news that KU had completed a climate survey for staff, and the morale at KU is very low. I don't think we really need a climate survey here at K-State to tell us that the morale is fairly low. I know that you're working on the Total Rewards program, and there is a shift in trying to look for funds in order to, compensate for the hardworking staff here at K-State. Are there other things that is being looked at or being done to help the morale issue here at K-State?
Well, I think we do need a climate survey. I think we're due one.
We did.
We've begun it? So, okay,
done
so.
Supposed to redo it every 5 years.
So we're redoing it, so we're in the middle of that, or we're beginning it? April, this was a decision we made a while back that we needed another one. It's been a while since the last one.
Many of you participated in the climate survey in the fall of 2014. We've already gotten together. Carol was a part of the discussions with Faculty Senate, USS Senate, and our Student Government Association to discuss when we would do the next one. Before the 2014 climate survey, it had been almost 12 years since a climate survey had been done. What with our gun policy going into effect on July 1, we had a pretty universal decision, and I'll defer to Carol if she heard it differently, to wait until the gun policy had been in place for a year and to be conducting the climate survey in 2018. So yes, we've already begun the discussions for the next round, and it is a promise that we would do it on a regular basis and not wait an additional 12 years.
So, I'm open to any suggestions on how we can, what we can do, but, So, I think the best thing we can do for morale is kind of what we're doing. We're bringing the personnel system at K-State out of the 19th century, not the 20th, one before that, to the 21st century. It's not easy, it's painful, but in the end, it's going to benefit everybody. And we've got to do that, folks. I've never seen, when I came here as your new president, I was aghast at our personnel system, our human resources. It was awful, awful. So is it going to be painful getting to the new place? Yes. That's interesting, but to me, not important. What's important is we get there. Morale will improve when people can see a path to progress and moving forward. You have no path right now. It's the whim of supervisors and leadership. It's a county option. We're going to make this a lot more intentional, disciplined, and so forth. And that's going to benefit all of us at some point. In the meantime, I would offer that as, you ought to think of that as a morale booster, because we're trying to get ourselves organized. We've not been organized before. We're moving a lot of other places to try to find money, shared services, and so forth. So what you need to know is that the administration is looking for every way we can to save money as well as increase revenue from either tuition or from the state. and I don't know what else to do. So we're not going to throw a picnic every Friday, so that's not going to happen. But stop by the house and I'm there, you might get some soda, but I'm just joking. Well, kind of joking. If you stop by, I'd give you a soda, but don't stop by. A lot of you do anyway, and that's fine. We have this video camera on the front door, and when people come, it looked like a student comes wandering down the path, and the video starts, and I can see it on my app here, and he starts reading some of the plaques around the front door. Then he looks at the front door, tries to handle, and then moves on. And I don't know if he thought, well, this is the president's residence. Maybe we can just come in and take a tour anytime we want. It's a museum. Maybe we should be able to come in. So I found that I'm glad I wasn't home, because if you'd rung the bell, I'd probably let him in. So we keep looking for ways to make ourselves more efficient, better, so then we can compensate people fairly. And compensation is a big part of morale, I think. And we're not compensating everybody fairly these days. That's a given. So, but just know that we're working it as hard as we can work it. It's something that we all care about that are in the administration, I'll tell you that. And we spent a lot of time with legislators this session trying to sensitize them to that. So, and there's signs that there's movement. We'll see. We'll see. Not enough movement, but some movement.
Okay, getting back to Cindy's question or information in reference to a 1% increase for $2.2 million, does that include the faculty? Because I know there's probably several in this room and across the campus that haven't had but the one increase, that's USS staff, only the one increase when they went from classified to USS since 2008. So if you took out the faculty and you only did USS and unclassified professionals, do you know what that number would be? Because I know that Wichita State has done increases for individuals that were $90,000 and less, and then anybody over and above that didn't receive an increase.
So addressing the first question, the 2.2 million does include faculty. So that's everyone in a field position. And again, this is just general use funding. So some of you are funded through auxiliary, some of you are funded service clearing and other sources. So all I'm referring to is the general use budget, 2.2 million. I recall KU and maybe Wichita State, I wasn't aware of that, had done some kind of a bonus type thing looking at the lower salaries and had provided some adjustments. I think, working through with the budget advisory, some of the discussion has been that they really wanted to have a more unified approach. That, the under market, I think, definitely has a priority. President Myers has said that already. But then to provide a pay raise, because, there are positions, faculty positions that are fairly low also. And they have the same struggles that many of our USS employees have. They weren't eligible for the promotions and things that we've seen. And so some of the discussion there has been, trying to be more united and providing an increase across the board. So just a reminder, because sometimes we forget, 2008 was the last year the state provided funding for increases. Many of our USS have not received anything other than maybe their $50 longevity, but in 2015, we all received a 2% around. And I understand that's not enough. I'm not even want to argue that. It's just mostly making sure we recall. And then there were a few other salary adjustments for unclassified professionals prior to that before we were USS.
Okay, so our time is nearly up. So I am going to ask each of the panel to provide just a bit of information as part of a closing summary, or if there's any information that you want to impart to us as an audience that you would find useful. We'll go ahead and start with you, Jeff.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you for the hard work. It was a joy being on campus this weekend, and people always remark about how we're all part of the K-State family, and And as I look at that, I realize, families have squabbles and families have disagreements, but at the end of the day, we come together and do the right thing. I think I want people to know how hard these folks in human capital have been working to do the right thing. And I know that there's been a lot of contention, a lot of angst over this, but we know where we want to be, and where we want to be is going to be better for people, and it's going to take us some time to get there. It's not perfect, but people are working really hard, and I think we're trying to do the right thing. So I would just say, please be patient, please be helpful. We have a fairly open door policy. I do answer a lot of phone calls and emails. If you have questions, then please ask. So that's all I have to say.
And I would just echo that sentiment that, it doesn't feel like you're very valued, but we truly do. This campus couldn't operate without many of you that are in this room. I appreciate President Meyer's comments about the look of the campus. I know how hard our landscaping folks work on, and they take a lot of pride in how that does, along with our custodial staff and many, really, of our employees, many of you, most of you, all of you, take pride in what we have here at Kansas State University. And, I value this opportunity because I want to hear what's in your heart. I want to hear, what your concerns are. And so how else are we going to address that? We need to have tough conversations. And so I just want you to be open, willing, and like Jess said, when we get through having that discussion, it's important that we all come back and get unified again as we move forward in trying to deal with some of these challenges that we have.
The only thing I would say is to Jeff and to the Human Capital Resources team, thank you. They're not a huge team. They've been working really hard to make this a better place to work. So my hat's off to them. We're getting there. It's not without a lot of issues, a lot of questions, but we're moving forward, I think, at an appropriate pace at this point. We were going to roll all this out in September, right? So here we are in April. We've deliberately, that's been deliberate. Those were decisions we made that we weren't ready in September. We might have been ready in one aspect, but so we've taken our time to try to get this more right. And so we are more right. We're not totally right yet. But so thanks, Jeff, to you and team, Derek. Thank you so much. Cindy, thanks for your leadership, Carol. So my leadership philosophy is, one of the tenets is that I learned a long time ago that nobody on your team, and we're all on the same team, we're on the Kansas State University team, nobody is more or less important than anybody else. So I'm the president, but I'm not the most important person. We all have to do what we're supposed to do, or our entity, Kansas State University, is not all it can be. And I really believe that, so I appreciate everything you all do. Don't think I don't. I know who gets the work done. I mean, I'm from the military. I know that the generals didn't do it. It was everybody else, so I got it. That's true, by the way. Generals may get the credit or the blame, but they're not the ones doing the work. And it's often not the officers either. So I understand how this works. But so I thank you all for what you've done and what you're doing. And as we go forward, if we can start compensating people more fairly, that I think we'll make a lot of improvements around here. And that's our goal. And by the way, it does extend to the faculty. We have the lowest paid faculty in the Big 12. Is that where you want to be as a president of the university? No, it's not where you want to be. That's abhorrent. We have folks here that are not earning a living wage. Are you proud of that, Mr. President? No, I'm not proud of that. That's awful. So as quickly as we can fix those things, we'll fix those things. We're just, as you know, we're not in total control of our destiny when it comes to compensation. But I would say there's a glimmer. This could all go away in a week. But there's a glimmer of hope that we're gonna get some help from the state, appropriate help, I would say, from the state that will help us ease into some of this. So that's my comment. And I appreciate you all being here. Sorry I was late. My wife made me make a video for a birthday video for a friend. So, I mean, it was her birthday yesterday, so I couldn't tell her no today. I had to kind of ease into this back to normal life anyway.
I would just encourage everybody to continue to read the K-State Today articles and be aware of what's going on with the legislature in Topeka. When we are an educated group and we unite, that is when we're going to make progress together. And I know there's a lot of frustration right now, but I truly believe that we can make progress over the next couple of years. I'm looking forward to being your president next year for USS Senate, and I know the senators that are returning are working very hard for you guys as well. So as you have questions, as you have needs, please keep the USS Senate in mind as an advocate for you. We are here to help. So, reach out to us, use us, come to our meetings. We thank you for coming today, and we really are here to serve you.
Good point that was just made, and that is you have a voice, and you can talk to your representatives in Topeka, and you ought to do so. It's easy to find out where to send stuff. And if you're sitting here talking to us about issues that you have that pertain to their legislation, talk to them. Let them know. And the more the better. Your voice is probably stronger than any of our voices in Topeka. And tell your stories. Tell them your stories. I know some of your stories because you tell me some of your stories. We know some of your stories, but they need to know the same stories. They know, so feel free to let your voice be heard. And things change that way, by the way. So.
I'm going to channel Sue real quick because I can hear probably in her mind saying, please don't use your K-State email and do it after hours.
I will say the same thing. More importantly, make your voice heard. And if you make a mistake and use the wrong whatever, I got it. But I'm not saying to do that, but make your voice heard. It's a good point, very good point. Sue will remind me.
So I'd like to thank the panel very much for coming and being with us today. We very much appreciate it. Thanks to all the senators who made this event happen today. We thank you as well. Hopefully it's not raining and you won't get wet on the way back to the office. Thank you very much.